a big chance of doing well against Golden Guardians here. We have not seen Golden Guardians strategy yet, but Theater of Pain is one of those dungeons where there's not too much we've seen teams change. We did see Perplexed come up with a new strategy where they actually went to the Xav area second instead of going to the Gourd Shop area. And it looked like a really fast strategy, but we haven't seen any of the other teams adapt to it just yet. We've seen most of the teams just stick to that cap strategy, and that's exactly what Stygia is doing. So if Golden Guardians did not change up anything, but Sarah did say they actually have that Elemental Shaman and the Warrior, so I wonder if they also change up their strategy and not just their comp.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. Golden Guardians and Stygia ready to roll here as Theater of Pain game number 1 gets underway. Oh,
they didn't run it.
Yeah, feels bad. So there's no Prod Warrior, unfortunately, for Golden Guardian side. Just vengeance Demon Hunters all the way. But we do see a little bit of a difference in comp. We see the Elemental Shaman for Golden Guardians plus the Windwalker versus the Shadow Priest and the Moonkin for Stygia. Stygia really likes running this Moonkin in almost all of the dungeons, actually.
Yeah, one of the things that we've learned from some of our friends over in the Chinese region, we played a lot of Mythic Plus dungeons on beta with some Chinese players, and we talked to them occasionally to get some information on these teams. One of our friends told us that in some of these teams in the Chinese region, they prefer players that play well over players that can multi-class. So a team like Stygia, a lot of their players, or pretty much all of their DPS players, just play their main. That's why we see this particular comp run from them so often, and they are just bounce housing around as I'm talking about this. Pretty funny. But yeah, you can see their comp did deal with the boss a little more swiftly than what we saw from Golden Guardians, of course with the difference that Golden Guardians pulled a little bit of extra trash on top of the boss.
Yeah, so slight difference here in the boss kill. Of course, they both have to wait for this RP to happen. There's nothing you can really do here, so there's no kind of advantage you can gain in this downtime here while the RP is happening. And now we can see what areas they're going to. We have seen every single MDI team go to this Kulturak area first. So I would be surprised if we don't see the same thing from Golden Guardians as well. There we go, both of them going over there. We do see Lip is playing Necrolord on Golden Guardian side, so he just did activate that banner, while on Stygia's side, the Demon Hunter Sunshine is playing the Necrolord.
Yeah, Ellie Shaman is one of those interesting specializations in the game right now that really doesn't lose too much damage when you swap between a couple of their best Covenant choices. Both Night Fae and Necrolord are about the same in most scenarios, so being able to swap your Covenant on the Tournament Realm just to help out get some of those buffs overall in the dungeon is really nice, and it kind of frees up your DH, which normally would be the one playing Necrolord in this dungeon, to actually play Kyrian, which is just way better. Especially, they can remove debuffs. It's a little bit more utility for them, and I think the tree is a little better for them too. So, yeah, it's nice to have that little added extra viability there. You can have a class that Necrolord's actually good for, play Necrolord.
Yeah, so we already have a little bit of a difference here in percentage. Looks like Golden Guardians did pull a lot more of these souls in this pool, as they're up to 15% trash, while Stygia only has 11% before they killed off these two mobs here. So definitely a little bit of an advantage here for Golden Guardians. We'll see what they can skip later on in the other wings. So let's keep an eye on the percentage here for later. And also the difference in Pride spawns, because the Prides will be spawning in different locations now for both of those teams. Stygia is now seeing that Magus here that is actually inspired to the side. So they gripped it to the side, made sure they used the Undead Shackle from the Shadow Priest to be able to see it, because otherwise this pull would be incredibly difficult if you cannot actually get any of those interrupts onto the Soulbinders and then onto the Magus.
Yeah, and it looks like what Golden Guardians opted to go for was a Paralyze on that Inspired Mage, and then Ring of Piecing it away from where they were so that they can make sure they get these interrupts on. And then they'll probably just pull it in on top of the Prideful once everything is dead and cleave it down. And yeah, both teams opted to go for a similar strategy, just a little bit different execution. And, working out well for both teams. But honestly, it looked like it worked a little bit better for Golden Guardians there, as their comp is definitely way more superior at dealing out consistent AoE damage. I feel like it's just a better comp to run for this dungeon, and we know Stygia doesn't like to swap their comps up. We covered that earlier, so I think there's definitely just a bit of an advantage comp-wise on the side of Golden Guardians.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with the consistency here, and this is why Golden Guardians is already on their way to the next platform. Considering that they are ahead in dungeon speed and also have this percentage advantage as well, right? They're 3% ahead in trash, so definitely quite a bit in favor of Golden Guardians so far. But neither of the teams making any sort of mistakes, so that is really good to see. We see the Ashen Hollow being popped here by PDF for this big Bone Reaver plus Magus pull. The most difficult thing here for this pull is to be able to just stack up all of the casters from the side. Once they are stacked, it's really not an issue anymore, as they can just use that AoE silence and the AoE stance to just not have any of those casts go through.
All right. Golden Guardians no longer in the leading dungeon progression. Ashen Hollow Wings just blasting their PDF, doing 40k DPS over that pull. Yeah, that's pretty nutty. Now, of course, the question is whether or not that's a more valuable use of cooldowns over where Golden Guardians is going to be using on the boss. But PDF has gone down on this pull. They do have the battle res, but that's their only one available now. They won't have another one up for another 5 minutes at this point. So no more mistakes able to be had. If a death occurs on this next boss, that'll be the worst case scenario here for Stygia. Golden Guardians still holding on to theirs, though.
It looks like Golden Guardians just now popped the Ashen for this pull here. So JB using Ashen to be able to just deal with this trash back here, also proccing the Pride as well. The Ashen is going to be up until this Pride. And this is the platform where we've seen DGS just struggle so much in the past. Earlier, when we saw the Shaman actually fall down because of the storming that you have here and all of these other effects. So a really dangerous pull, but both of the teams seem to be able to executing it quite well. So yeah, different kinds of offensive cooldown usage here for both of those teams. As Golden Guardians is a little bit lower in their Pride because of the Ashen, they caught up quite a bit against Stygia. This is just back and forth between those teams at the moment. Whenever the Ashen is being popped by the Paladin, you can see they're slingshotting ahead again.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, healers doing damage is really interesting in the case of this scenario, right, where they actually just slingshot ahead of each other based off of the cooldowns. But, honestly, I think I like Golden Guardians usage more, making sure they're much more safe for that Prideful. You could see near the end of the Prideful, Stygia was kind of dropping really low, and if it lasted any longer than that, they might have been in a bad scenario. But here we are, pretty much the same execution. Golden Guardians maintaining that tiny lead, maybe 15 seconds at most, and then in addition to 5 seconds on the board, plus the tiny % of dungeon percentage.
Yeah, and now we're going to see Kulturak being dealt with. Can be a dangerous boss because of the huge amount of damage coming out from the magic debuffs. Stygia a little bit safer on this boss because they have the Master Spell from the Shadow Priest. So they can actually get rid of both of those magic debuffs. I believe only every second application of the debuffs because of the cooldown on Master Spell. But yeah, just definitely having a little bit of a supportive dispel here. While Golden Guardians though does have the Elemental Shaman who can help out with healing, so in case something does go wrong. But it looks like it's very stable for both. Stygia though did manage to catch up quite a bit on boss HP, probably because of the Convoke plus CA that the Moonkin has popped just recently. Huge amount of single target bursts, of course, whenever those cooldowns are ready for the Moonkin.
Well, another big thing is that Fired Up ended up committing his Combust to that Prideful at the end to make it go more cleanly, just going for the overall DPS rather than the boss DPS. But Simba had his Combust up at the start of this boss, was able to get 2 in for the duration of it, whereas Fired Up is just going to come up as they're heading to their next pull. So again, it's just cooldown flip-flopping for both teams here. You can't really tell who's ahead until we get to the end of the dungeon or one of them makes a mistake because they're that close.
Yeah, definitely. We still have the little bit of a trash advantage here because of the extra souls that Golden Guardians has pulled. We do see the in-cap being used for Golden Guardians to skip past this, while Stygia actually had to use their invisibility potion. Because Stygia still had 3 or 4 souls standing there at the entrance, they were not able to use their CC to get past it, so they had to use the invisibility potion, while Golden Guardians was able to just commit the Shadow Melt from Shakib. He was the one using in-cap on one of the souls, walked past it to be able to be the one in combat, and then Shadow Melted off the aggro, while the rest of the team could just walk past. So a little bit of a save here from potions, which is going to matter for damage. It's not as big of a deal, because all potions are on a 5-minute cooldown now, right? So you only lose out on 1 potion. One cast actually, looks like one cast went through, or an AoE went through. Both Lip and Shakib had disease on them, but did manage to dispel both. Of course, they do have the double disease dispel here with the Paladin and the Monk as well.
And you can see a slight difference because of where they use their cooldowns. The Ashen was available for this pull for PDF, where it's not available for JB, so I'm interested to see how he's planning on using that Ashen. It must be used downstairs on the next massive pull. They could probably just pull everything after these patrols and just instantly burst it all down with the Ashen Hollow. But yeah, PDF has committed his to this trash back, and honestly, it hasn't really gained them that much of an advantage here. They both are dealing with the final two mobs here, and actually Stygia hasn't even pulled that final Sludge Spear, so I think even with the Ashen Hollow committed for Stygia, Golden Guardians has secured an advantage here. And I think that, again, has to come down to the comp difference. Golden Guardians really has 3 separate DPS classes on their team, in addition to the Holy Paladin, that can dish out really solid, consistent AoE damage, where for Stygia, they really only have the Mage, right? The Priest and the Boomkin don't consistently do good AoE damage.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think Windwalker and Elemental Shaman are much stronger when it comes to consistent AoE damage, and this is why it just looks so much cleaner even when they don't have any of those big cooldowns ready like the Ashen. And now we see Golden Guardians do a pretty huge pull. The Ashen now being committed for JB as he's popping down on this gas back here and on all of the smaller mobs that are being spawned. And we also get that Pride. So huge amount of damage onto the group here from the gas bag, doing that pulsing AoE in the group on top of also the Pride doing the pulsing AoE. While you also have a Butcher alive hitting Yoda, so lots of damage on the group, but the Ashen should be able to heal through it. We also have one CC on the Horror here, because it is inspired. They're now pulling it in once the rest of the trash is dead and cleaving it down. That was really well executed. They also committed their Bloodlust for it too.
Yeah, and again, the same thing happening again for Stygia here. Once again, the Mage really only the big AoE burst class, and it's causing them issues here as those leaps from the Sludge Spears keep coming out. Cauterize and Ice Block now popped on Simba Mage here. Going to be an issue, especially for Gorchop coming up, because you take a lot of damage, especially on this high key level here from the leaps on that fight. So he's going to have to be moving around like crazy because of that. And it's just causing them more issues, not really having the AoE to get through this section of the dungeon. They're going to have to make up a ton of room in the Duelist Quarter, but honestly, I don't think their single target damage is really enough to make up here, as long as Golden Guardian stays clean. And as I say that, I'm fired up, gets hooked.
Yeah, he tried so hard to sidestep past this chain wall. Did manage though, as he is just now popping his combust. Did manage to save his Ice Block and also didn't proc Cauterize. So still lots of defensives available for I'm Fired Up here, as they're dealing with Gorchop and the Butcher and the Horror that they pulled from the entrance area as well. So really efficient for Golden Guardians. And one more thing to note, because of the difference in trash, Golden Guardians had proc their 60% Pride really early on that pull, while Stygia only procced it once the gas bag was dead. So even though that is a safer way to deal with this trash, of course it's much more efficient to just cleave down the Pride with the gas bag. So that's why they made up quite a bit of time. And they're also ahead in trash. If you look at the trash percentage difference, it's still a 8% difference. Of course, there's still the Butcher alive for Stygia, so they're gonna get, and the Horror too, so they're still gonna get some trash back, but overall they're still gonna be behind, and that's something we're gonna have to see how they make up for it in the XF area, as PDF also gets hit by the chain wall, does manage to heal through it though.
Yeah, those two together will get Stygia to around 70%, so they're still behind an overall trash count, but I mean, the gap opened up here by Golden Guardians is massive. 60% of the boss's HP from how clean both of those AoE pulls on this wing were. And really the only thing left between now and the end of the dungeon are like 4 or 5 massive single target health mobs. You have the mini bosses in that duelist section of the dungeon left, and you have 2 bosses. That's it. And they'll have Ashen probably two more times over the course of the dungeon as well. Whereas, Stygia has just only now committed the Ashen to Gorchop, so they'll probably only have 1 left for the rest of the dungeon. I think, the cards are just stacked in Golden Guardian's favor, as long as they don't make any major mistakes in this duelist section of the dungeon.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Golden Guardians having such a clean run so far. They're incredibly quick and executing all of these pulls so flawlessly too, as they're now pulling. This is also interesting. We've seen most of the teams actually try to deal with the 3 mobs earlier before they pull this mini. So keep going down actually, but he can release as they're right at the entrance. Didn't find the way straight away as he walked into the wrong direction, but now came back to the group. But yeah, this is really dangerous because you have this inspired mob on top of the group, so none of those mobs can actually be CC'd or interrupted.
Yeah, a little unfortunate that he went down there, but really not that big of a deal, right? It's probably one of the best deaths you can have here. Of course, no death is the best, but sometimes you just gotta die. He was stuck in between on a rock and a hard place there. That tornado was coming right for him. But yeah, able to easily release, like literally 2 rolls away from the group. 5 seconds on the board, you lose your food buff. Pretty much the best case scenario for a death in any case. Gorechop now going down for Stygia, but you can see the advantage that's now opened up here. Over a minute difference at this point in the dungeon for Golden Guardians here, and I mean, it's going to be tough for Stygia to make their way back in. Important here, waiting for Lip to get back to the group to spawn that 80% Prideful, though.
Yep, they are stacking up now to spawn that Pride, all of them using that invisibility potion to run past. Let's see if they make it. Looks like none of them are in combat, so that's good. It's really good for them to be able to have the Pride time later on before they go to the last boss. And now we see the captain being taunted out. I'm fired up, proccing his cauterize here, unfortunately. But they did manage to get the captain out and got the ink cap to be able to not have that aura on the trash here and also not have the inspired either. Ashen also being popped by JB here to help out with the healing and the damage as well. This is a really dangerous pull because you have all of these Arbalists throwing out the bleed effects on everybody, and then you also have Haruja also throwing out bleeds on everyone, so huge amounts of damage on the whole group.
Man, I'm fired up is just under attack right now. Got shot to death by the Arbalest, procced his Cauterize, used his Ice Block just to make sure he didn't die. Then he got knocked up on his Combust, then he got charged by Haruja twice. Man, he's just in a world of pain right now. Fortunately, not going down, so no death timer on the board, just a lot of personal cooldowns committed to not die through this pull. And yeah, I mean, Golden Guardians is sitting pretty now. With Haruja down, I believe that'll be yep, that's their final Pride. Now they'll have to kill this Pride, I believe. Because what they're going to be doing is they're going to be using that speed boost that you get from the Pride dying and the buff that you gain to run past the next mini-boss, and then they'll be able... Well, No, I'm just wrong completely. They're probably going to be death skipping it or tank skipping it with the Night Elf ability from Yoda, so never mind. But yeah, they're just going to be skipping that final mini-boss, using the Prideful to burst down this second-to-last boss, and then they'll be home free. I mean, you can see the advantage they've opened up. It's just widened even more now. Stygia really not being able to close the gap, only just now dealing with that first mini-boss.
Yeah, it's interesting adaptation by Golden Guardians. We've never seen a team go for that 100% Pride here. Almost all of the teams did proc the last Pride with the trash that is still in the entrance area. So they're basically just skipping that one completely and not having to deal with it. While Golden Guardians decides to proc the 100% Pride for Xav, which, to be honest, I don't think it's a bad Pride because Xav has so much HP, even on fortified. So being able to kill this boss a little bit quicker does save you a lot of time because the less arenas you get, the faster you're gonna be, right? So they just decided that getting this extra Pride is worth it to be able to just kill this boss quicker. And you can see how fast the boss is dying. They don't have Ash and Hollow available because JB did use it on the Arbalest pack earlier, but he's gonna have it again for the last boss, I believe. Looks like they're also ignoring the banners, just passively cleaving it down, and mainly just trying to dodge the attacks by Xav while being slowed.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. This no banner strat is definitely the most fast way to get through Xav, as long as you have people in your group that are totally fine with not being able to really move. You have to use cooldowns to move during the slam phase. So you have the leaps from the Demon Hunter, you have the bop or the freedom from the Paladin. The mage can blink around and block if he really has to, although that's not up now. I think the only one... Nope, Shaman can just Ghost Wolf if they want to, or he can just wall through it and live, no problem. Astral Shift committed. And then the Monk also has Tiger's Lust as well as Rolls. Like, they all have their own individual ways to get out of that slam. So the banner move speed debuff doesn't really do anything to them. And you can see they had 2 of them alive as the boss side. They're not going to be worrying about that Ancient Captain at all, I believe. They'll just be moving on to this Pride and then the final boss with maybe with Lust. It might not come up on the pull. But yeah, great execution so far from Golden Guardians. And really only that one death from Shakib on the Monk.
Yeah, definitely really well done, as I'm Fired Up is the one who is going to be triggering that last event here, while the rest of the team is staying down, dealing with this Pride to basically surpass this RP event that happens to be able to get the last boss to spawn. I'm Fired Up is going to be jumping down as soon as he got up. There's no fall damage actually when he jumped down, so anyone can just jump. But I'm Fired Up, of course, having that blink does help, as he's now back down. You can see him cast from the corner here. And they drop a little bit low because they don't really want to commit any of those offensive cooldowns for this one because they have Bloodlust available very soon. It looks like it's just barely not going to be available during the Pride buff, right? Because it just now started to be a 1 minute cooldown and the Pride is also a 1 minute buff. So they're not actually going to be able to stack the Pride and the Lust. But still, it's a huge amount of damage left here for Golden Guardians as they had a incredibly clean run. This one death on Shakib, as we talked about earlier, was really not that big of a deal, and just super, super clean by Golden Guardians.
Well, with the Ashen Hollow committed during the Prideful timer, they might not even get that third Lust up with how quickly this boss is melting now. Time to beat from, I believe, Perplexed was at 20:28 earlier in the Cup. Golden Guardians is definitely going to get pretty close to that. But with the cooldowns now running out, they really only have the Wings and the Ashen Hollow committed for pure single target damage. I don't think anything else is going to be coming up anytime soon, so they might just barely get that Lust off. But all things considered, relatively clean run from Golden Guardians. And to be fair, Stygia, they did a pretty good job too, right? I mean, it's way better than the run they had yesterday, which was 24 minutes and change, but just not enough to compete with Golden Guardians here. I mean, Stygia's here to play for sure, but they got to step it up a little bit if they want to compete in this next match.
Jabi going down actually here for Golden Guardians. They do have a Battle Rest available, but they have to use an Engineering one, unfortunately. I don't actually think they even need to get him back up because there shouldn't be any more group damage at all. Might be doing it for safety, or they're just gonna let him dead as they finish off the boss, and they're gonna be winning the first game against Stygia here, 1-0.
Just abandoning their healer, letting him rot. Unbelievable. But the Golden Guardians do take game number 1 here in the Theater of Pain, and they are going to be in a very nice position as they start setting their sights towards the second couple games in this series, Tels.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that both teams actually played pretty decent. Not very many mistakes, and there were a couple mistakes, but like overall, they were just 5 seconds of death differential here, 5 seconds of death there. Nothing that really impacted the run as a whole. Stygia looked pretty good.
Shaman.
Golden Guardians looked like their composition was just a little bit faster. You do see that Ellie Shaman topping the damage meter at 10k DPS. I mean, that's why you play Ellie Shaman plus Windwalker Monk. I feel like you're just killing power on some of those more difficult pulls. Just puts you at a little bit more favorable position than that of like the Shadow Priest plus the Moonkin. And it was reflected in their routing just a little bit. There was just a couple discrepancies. GG was able to get the harder pulls down a lot quicker and made up a lot of time there just by that.
And the HPS too, 1.1k overall HPS.
There's a lot of healing.
Yeah, just being able to have that extra contribution to make sure that some of these like larger pulls or some of these more aggressive pulls where there's just a lot of like random damage that can go out onto people gets more easily covered. And thankfully this time to grow, we didn't have any lives claimed out of storming, knocking people off of the ledge.
When we got to that platform, I was just staring at everybody and looking at the tornadoes. Like, oh my god, let's not have that happen again. But thankfully, they did commit a lot of offensive cooldowns to be able to go through that. And yeah, that platform is just so tiny. It's definitely difficult even without storming. So when you have that storming affix on top of it, having to pay attention to so much stuff, and then you have the Pride spawning halfway through as well, it can be really difficult.
Yeah, no question here. And, we're starting to look at the rest of the series as well as ironic. We've been seeing so many Necrotic Wakes today. It's just constantly popping up for all of these teams. And, the technical challenges, the hurdles, the threats of huge wipes are always going to be present.
Yeah, so I need to tell you guys about something that we do as casters to make sure we have good information on our dungeons here. We have a spreadsheet where we track all the times team have here, and when I go and look at what Nagura has put down here for Stygia on Necrotic Wake, it says 21 deaths, wipes everywhere. So I hope they practice this dungeon before this series. Otherwise, we're going to have some problems here, and Golden Guardians going to be moving on 2-0.
Otherwise, Agura's going to add some more mean notes into the spreadsheet there. No one will be safe.
Sorry, but they wiped in every pool.
They did.
Yeah.
You're going to do it like that?
Sometimes it'd be that way. Tattles and I experienced a Necrotic Wake together one time where we ran it down. It happens to the best of us, right, bud?
Did we time that key, though?
I think we left. I'm pretty sure we left.
It happens? Well, I just blocked that one out of my memory. I mean, I have left a lot of necrotic wakes after you just run it down. And lose your weapons, and you're
I think the team mutually decided it was time to go. Sometimes that happens, and the added pressure, of course, for these teams, especially for the global finals being what it is, the increased prize pool, increased prestige, the eyes on them, and everything like that as well. Nagura, there's bound to be a ton of pressure for them.
Definitely. And if I remember correctly, Stygia also mentioned that they can only practice in the evenings, and then they also have raids as well that they have to accommodate, so they really have very limited practice time as well. And if you consider all of that, and them also like not really playing the classes that we see most other teams playing, then they're doing really well. Like that's incredibly impressive for them to be able to compete with those Western teams with having that limited time to practice.
I mean, they're described as like just normal players, meaning like they aren't streamers. They don't like spend 10, 12 hours a day during the 2 weeks of preparation coming into this, like practicing. They do just kind of spend, like we saw in the segment, they only spend like 3 or 4 hours a day, a couple days a week, trying to get themselves into good shape for the MDI. And like with that considered, I mean, that's the reason they're also playing this same comp for every single dungeon, is just because like their limited amount of time and limited expertise. But I mean, with that considered, they're looking really solid. That Theater of Pain that they ran, it wasn't the fastest thing I've ever seen, but you're able to capitalize on like other teams' mistakes if you are running a Theater of Pain with like that level of consistency and cleanness.
Yeah, and there's been a number of times where teams just staying in the fight, staying in the race. I mean, that's no stranger at all, Zyro, to Golden Guardians in particular. I mean, we saw that Plaguefall yesterday. They had the most catastrophic possible wipe at the beginning of the instance you could possibly have, and then they stuck by and they actually committed and continued moving on, and they got the win out of it.
Yeah, and I mean, that's just kind of a mental thing that we've been talking about for a long time when it comes to the MDIs. I mean, say what you will about how ridiculous it must be to play with both I'm Fired Up and Shaq on the same team, but those two together really won't ever let you feel too bad for too long. They're kind of crazy people to play with. So, yeah, even if JB was a little let down and said, "Yo, can we forfeit?" They're like, "Nope, it's all good. Let's keep pulling." I guarantee you that's what the comps were like.
And I think that's probably one of the nicest things that you start seeing with so many of these long-lasting teams, the staples really of the MDI as well, Nagura, is you start seeing these teams who have a great mix and blend of personalities, who can kind of buffer each other up and encourage each other when the times are at the absolute worst,
Yeah, that is just so important, because also during practice, the amount of time you have to put into these dungeons and try things over and over and over, and mistakes happen. These teams have to focus every single second for the whole dungeon long, that sometimes it takes 20 minutes to finish one of those really long dungeons, which is considered long for the MDI. Of course, on live services, it would be much longer even. But doing just insane pull after insane pull and always having to press every button perfectly at every time must be so exhausting as well. And to be able to pull up all of this practice and then also being able to stay in the game all the time and not really dwell on mistakes that anyone is making is so important for these teams. They just have to be patient, and they have to be just not having any sort of tilt happening, which can be incredibly hard. If you play on live servers and you have any sort of pod groups that you go with, then you know how hard it can be to just, not tilt and just keep on playing.
Yeah, and in particular, I think that's always really interestingly, captured as well by like the ebb and flow of dungeons. We've talked as well a number of times, Zyro, about how Necrotic Wake in particular is this dungeon that is like, all right, really big pull, we got to really focus, and then you just have like a very big cooldown period, and then another huge pull, we got to focus, and there's a cooldown period back and forth. So like just being able to have everybody focused at the right moments but still be able to remain positive is always a challenge.
Yeah, and this is something that was mentioned in the video that Stygia made. We watched a little while ago earlier today. One of the things that they said was it really comes down to the details. And while it may look as simple as, oh, let's just go blast AoE and cleave all these huge trash packs down, no, there's very specific CC timings, very specific times you have to use the weapon so you don't just rip aggro and instantly die. There's a lot of tiny things that you just don't really see watching it from our perspective all the time, and that's why you see teams wipe.
Yeah, and just getting to this point and getting to this competition still requires a ridiculous amount of work and dedication. So huge kudos to them right now as Golden Guardians is up 1. Stygia facing elimination as Necrotic Wake gets rolling here in game number 2.
All right, so we already see a difference in comp here. Golden Guardians playing the Elemental Shaman. This is something we've seen by PI before as well, while Stygia is playing the Shadow Priest and the Windwalker Monk on top of course, the Mage, which is, of course, required in these MDI comps. So, slight difference. Basically, just Windwalker versus Elemental Shaman. We're gonna have to keep an eye on the difference there. Everything else is the same. This initial pull here is really crucial as Rua actually goes down on the Windwalker here. They don't have a Battle Res class, so they're gonna have to be using the Engineering Res. He's trying to get it off, but they're spawning the Pride now, and it's so difficult to get the Engineering Rest off. Sunshine going down too, Simba going down. This might be a full team wipe for Stygia,
no.
as they're now spawning the Pride too. This is very, very unfortunate for Stygia, as they committed so many cooldowns for this pull, and now they didn't even manage to finish off all of the mobs here. You can see some smaller soldiers still alive. Yeah, disaster for Golden Guardians already on the first pull.
2 of the soldiers still have the raging buff on them. They pulled too quick. They didn't let it completely reset. And I gotta ask a question, Nagura. Is this me caster cursing them or you caster cursing them? Because you're the one who wrote down the thing in the spreadsheet, but I'm the one who brought it up. So, do we just go halfsies on this?
I'm gonna give you 60% fault, and I take 40.
That's fine. All right, I'll take it. I'll take it. I don't want to be the only one at fault. But yeah, there were good things from Golden Guardians on that poll, though. I mean, the thing that was incredibly nasty is that you had the AG on top of the spear damage from Lip Shaman. You could see he was doing 13k HPS. Probably the only one actually healing at that point, minus the passive damage from the Ashen Hollow from JB. That's just disgusting that works. I mean, really cool synergies. I like the fact that they're using Ellie Shaman in a lot of dungeons. I think it's a great way to play for them. But again, just really unfortunate for Stygia. This is such a volatile dungeon, and when you've got the nerves running, when you're in the tournament scenario, sometimes it just doesn't pan out for you. And unfortunately for Stygia, that seems to be the case here, is they're going to try to salvage it here by pulling the Prideful in. Maybe they'll pull it on top of the boss with the orbs, but, I mean, they're probably just 2 minutes behind now.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those dungeons where we talk about the fact that if anything goes wrong, you just lose so much time. Because you lose the weapons, you lose any sort of other things that you had, like the Anima Exhaust here, for example, as well. This AoE buff around you from the Kyrians. Thankfully, Stygia didn't actually proc it before they wiped, so they did activate it just now, which is gonna help them to finish off the boss here and also the trash that they still have to pull on top. But yeah, still huge time loss, unfortunately. Golden Guardians, though, they're up to 50% already as they're activating their 3rd Goliath here. And it looks like they actually had a little bit of a different strat so far compared to the other teams that we have been seeing. So dealing with the trash a little bit differently.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, Golden Guardians has way more trash count here than we're used to seeing from teams. I'm pretty sure they usually deal with the Prideful after the Narza pull, right? So it looks like they can actually skip a lot of the trash here and just pull these last 2 packs instead, and that should be all the trash they need. And if they wanted to, they could also line of sight. Yep, they can line of sight the Necromancer in to make this AoE pull even easier. And wow, I actually really like this. And there you go. I believe that was a spear coming out from the Bucko there from Shakib and just bursting it all down. All the trash it's just dead. Easy as.
Yep. Everything is indeed dead, and because they pulled the Necromancer here, they don't have to do any of those life grip shenanigans that we've seen other teams do before, and we see them pull extra trash here on top still, because they still have the Anima Exhaust buff, I'm pretty sure, as you can see them all stack up in melee range, so they use that AoE pulse to be able to deal with this last trash and also be able to heal the group from the Pride. So really well done. JB did Door of Shadows to the boss to be able to start that event, and you can see Lip still having one of the spears here on the back. So they definitely still have weapons left for that last Necropolis area, which is going to be the next crucial thing. I don't think a Marth is going to be a problem for them, even though we did see teams struggle on this boss in the past, Perplex specifically. But usually teams don't have an issue with this boss, as the next most important thing is going to be that Necropolis area, specifically the first pull, where we're going to be seeing multiple trash packs pulled on top of each other.
I liked seeing that movement there from... Oh, no, Lip! Oh, man, I was about to say, it looked like he was trying to get behind that mob to Thunderstorm it in, but then he realized he didn't have Thunderstorm off cooldown, so he just kind of sat there awkwardly for a couple seconds there, and because of that, almost died to the breath. But outside of that, they're looking clean. The Ashen Hollow literally carrying the single target damage as J. Bucko is at the top there, 3k DPS ahead of anyone else on the team, just blitzing the boss down, of course. And I mean, I guess I know when you have that Ashen up, when your Paladin's just bursting the boss down, you can save your cooldowns for the next pack, which is really kind of the final make or break pull in the dungeon. But man, it's just disgusting to see how much damage HPAL can do when it's just kind of catered to and allowed to just blast on single target.
Yeah, one more thing to note is actually JB dropping incredibly low because some of the casts from the boss are actually going through. One last breath coming out, Lip dropping really low, did manage to survive though, but yeah, having some issues here at the very end. But yeah, they don't actually have an Enrage dispel, so they not only can they not dispel the raging effect, but also this boss here, Amarth, actually does have a natural Enrage that, if not dispelled, makes the Necrobolts just do a lot more damage. We see JB just actually just doing the wing animation basically in real life as he's waiting for his character to be carried all the way up to this necropolis. And we see the sheep come out of I'm Fired Up to be able to have this patrol in the correct position.
Yep, here we go. And they're going to be preparing for pretty much this is it. If they're able to pull off this, they should be free to go with how far behind Stygia is. A lot can go wrong here, and if they do commit weapons and somehow wipe, there could be some issues for them, but here we go. They're going to be stacked up. Those spare parts are disoriented, so they'll just roll in after the fact, and the weapons are gone, the spear is out, and it's going to be completely destroyed. Everything getting bursted down. A few things in the raging section, but no issue whatsoever. The cheat death not even popped for Yoda, as the Metamorphosis just carries him through that, and with everything dead, they're going to be totally fine. They'll pull the Manifestation of Pride over to that Flesh Carver over here, and they'll just use those cleavers to burst down the Prideful. Unfortunately for Stygia, they are just not having a fun time in this dungeon yet again. 13 deaths on the board, another full team wipe, wipes everywhere once again. Just unfortunate to see. But Golden Guardians, I mean, this is what they needed. This is like a great way for them to kind of prepare for their next matchup if they do end up finishing off this dungeon and beating Stygia 2-0. They've got a pretty difficult matchup coming up. So actually, I believe it's a rematch, isn't it? They're against PIME, so they would be against the winner of, I believe, my brain is completely farting. It'd be
either
the winner
Obey
of
Alliance
the
or
other lower
PIME,
bracket.
I think,
Obey and PIME, who I think are pretty similar in how strong they are. So yeah, this is looking really great for Golden Guardians here. This is a great refresher for that matchup later today, should they move on.
Yeah, I mean, they're just so clean. I mean, the dungeons we've seen by Golden Guardians so far is incredible speed and also just such clean execution. It's really nice to see them perform so well. And yeah, I mean, if they perform like this, they can get so far in this tournament as well. Because, I mean, if you look at the time, they're 8 minutes in and we're fighting these assistants. The best time, I believe, was from Echo. They had like a 12 minutes 10 time, which is incredibly fast. We're going to have to keep an eye on the timer, see if they can compete with that fastest time. But they're really on their way to be able to do that. We have the Fleshcrafter already in raging range. I'm Fired Up is going to be the one who deals with it. You saw he just broke the Fleshcrafter to get that throw cleaver out, and that's how they finished up this assistant. And they're going to be carrying this Fleshcrafter throughout the rest of the dungeon, helping them to kill both of the bosses that are still left, and just continuing to sheep and to seed again. As I'm Fired Up, just barely managed to interrupt that cleaver because it was a little bit too early. None of the trash was there yet, so I'm Fired Up just blinking and Dragon's Breathing to interrupt the cleaver there.
You know, knowing those two, I wouldn't be surprised if he did that just to scare Shaq for fun and then blink Dragon's Breath at the last second. I mean, that's what those two are known for, just really dumb hijinks like that. Even in the face of a competition where hundreds of thousands of dollars are on the line, that's just the mindset of those buckos over there in Golden Guardians. That's how they play the game, and it's looking great for them here. I mean, they are on a blazing fast run here. What are the times that they have to beat to even compete in this dungeon? I think it's the lower 12 minutes, I believe, in Necrotic Wake. Yeah, 12:10 from Echo earlier yesterday against the same team they're against right now, Stygia.
Yeah, 12 minute 10 is the best time to beat. To be fair, I think 12:10 was actually a minute faster than our second time. So Echo was being exceptionally fast here specifically. Now we see Golden Guardians try to get the cleavers into the rot speed. And this is actually, I do think that the Fleshcrafter usage is the thing that you have to perfect to be able to beat the fastest 12-minute time. Because all of these cleavers need to be hitting the high HP targets, and Golden Guardians did it perfectly. Both cleavers went into the Rot Spew here and managed to finish it off so fast. If you do this perfectly, then you're so much quicker with this trash, and it makes up so much time. And Golden Guardians really textbook play with this Fleshcrafter here, as they're also dealing with it with the Pride perfectly, as they're now engaging the boss at 10 minutes. A really quick run so far by Golden Guardians.
Yeah, keep an eye on them. The usage of the Fleshcrafter is what sets apart the good teams from the great teams here. You're going to see Fired Up probably continue to polymorph that until the boss comes out. He'll probably let one throw Fleshcraft get off, then he'll repoly it, then throw his Combust, and then break it out of the poly right away just to try to make sure they get burst damage. There's the breakout with the Ice Nova. He's actually going to leave it in the Ice Nova probably, then Combust. Nope, polys before. Perfect. There you go. Beautiful. Even uses the hammer for boss damage. Wait, is he just not combusting whatsoever? Oh, it's not up. It's not off cooldown. That's a little bit of a problem, but there's the Combust coming out just now. They've actually just pulled the Fleshcrafter in because they want to make sure they get as much throw cleaver damage on the boss as possible. He wouldn't be able to break it in Combust,
Wow.
and there you go. Beautiful execution there from them, perfectly using the Fleshcrafter to break out the boss. And you can kind of see how much of a pain it is to actually play around with that as a mage, right? There's very specific timings you have to use in order to actually get all your damage off. Fortunately for them, they could just leave it out of the polymorph because they only had one of those creations up. But if you ever have 2 or more creations up, it's really difficult to get that in to make sure the Fleshcrafts get on the boss. So good execution there from them, and all they have to do is wait for it to come up here for the final boss.
So they actually got the Fleshcrafter up really fast. You can see it's already there. So there's a possibility if they get all of those throw cleavers into the boss fast, they might even be able to beat the time of Echo here, the 12 minutes and 10, because this Fleshcrafter is just doing so much damage with those cleavers. And they do have the Bloodlust available as well that they just popped. And the Ash, I'm not sure if the Ashen is ready. Unfortunately, they did have the Exile go through on Lip, as Lip is not actually a Night Elf. So this is the absolute worst target for Exile. All the other players could have used the Shadow Meld to delay the Exile cast, and then they could have tried to use the Grip from Shakib to interrupt the Exile, but because it goes on Lip, he's the only one who's not a Night Elf, unfortunately.
If they really wanted to try to go for a timer here, he could have died and then he could have onked when he gets ported back upstairs, I suppose, but
True.
You don't really need to do that. You've got the Fleshcrafter. That Throw Flesh cast will be coming up any moment now, and it will do the final 12% of the boss's HP. And that's going to be all she wrote. Golden Guardians, as this cleaver hits the boss, will be moving on to the next round of the lower bracket, and we will say goodbye to our final... Wait, they just trolled. They just canceled the cast for no
JB
reason
went
other than
down.
to troll me. And we get the achievement in our admin there ready for rating 7. But yeah, that'll be it. Our final team from the Chinese region has been knocked out, and we're moving on to our last 2 matches of the day, which will also be elimination matches.
Man, the cyberbullying of JB continues as his team just sacrifices him for the victory, taking the second game and taking the sweep, sending Stygia home. Congratulations there to Golden Guardians for staying